This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, good morning. Today I want to start a new OSB concept. Of course, concept-wise, it is the same concept what we used in SOA mediators. Okay, the same concept we can implement in OSB as well. Content-based routing. Content-based routing. Okay, so but what we need to learn here is a few new things in this example. I mean, in the content-based routing, what we do, we have multiple target services. If you see this diagram, we have multiple target services: addition web service, subtraction web service, multiplication web service. They can be with different technologies as well. One can be OSB program, one can be Java program, and one can be .NET program. Whatever it is, all our web services are REST services. It can be our target service can be a REST service. Target service can be a web service. So I will limit myself to web service within this example, okay, because we did not discuss about REST services, how to do the implementation of REST service in OSB, right? We'll see that. Before that, in this example, I'm just using target services as SOAP web services, but content-based routing is not restricted to SOAP web services, guys. You can use any target web service. It can be SOAP web service, it can be REST web service. Your target can be an adapter, it can be a different protocol, okay? So you no need to restrict yourself with SOAP web service. Anyway, in this example, I am taking my target web services as SOAP web services. Already we have addition web service, subtraction web service, and multiplication web service in hand. Let's assume they are up and running, deployed and running properly. Okay, so that means we have three target services. I don't want to share three different target services with my client. Okay, with my client I want to share only one web service. I want to implement a new web service here. Okay, I want to implement a new web service here, content based routing web service. What this web service will do, this web service accepts the input by looking into the content. By looking into the content, it will decide what is the target web service we need to consume. Okay, so this new web service will decide. This new web service will decide what, by looking into the content. So if you accept the input, see, I'm accepting this kind of input. I mean, I accept two integers along with the operation name. Along with the operation name, my operation name can be either addition, subtraction, or multiplication. One of the keyword we need to pass in the input based on by looking into this input, by looking into this content, my content based routing service will design in such a way. By looking into the content, it will route the request to either addition or subtraction service or the multiplication service. Okay, so that is what the implementation we need to do. This is the same concept what we do in SOA for a mediator. Is it clear? So to implement the content-based routing, I prepared one WSDL. Let me show you the WSDL. Let me show you the WSDL. Okay, this is the WSDL I prepared to implement the content-based routing. So this CBR interface, the CBR interface contains request XSD. Request XSD, observe this content-based routing request, which contains OSB in1, OSB in2, and operation symbol. Of course, you can give any naming convention here. What I will do, I will say field one. Okay, this one field two, right? So here operation something, operation, addition, subtraction, whatever. Okay, so here name and result. See this? This is the request XSD I want to use, and this is the response XSD I want to implement. Any questions as of now? Any questions? So this is the WSDL I want to use in this CBR routing web service. CBR content based routing web service. Okay, and this web service internally communicates with addition, subtraction, multiplication. That means we already have addition, subtraction, multiplication web services handy with us. So we already implemented. It's irrespective of technology. We just need WSDLs, nothing else. Okay. Let me get the WSDLs. Okay. So we will implement this new web service which internally communicates with the addition, subtraction, multiplication. So what we need to learn here? What we need to learn? So we are going to learn how to invoke an external service in OSB. This is the new concept we need to learn in today's session. How to invoke or how to call an external service in OSB program. Okay, so there are several ways we can do this. Anyway, just let me start the example. We will see how to invoke an external service. Okay, right. So before we start the project, remember the structure, guys. This is the CBR interface WSDL, CBR interface. You see, and remember the structure, the complex element, content-based routing request, field 1, field 2, operation. And the output is content-based response, content-based routing response, operation name and result. This is the CBR output. This is the CBR input. Just remember the structures because in OSB, we have to visualize the things. We don't get everything in graphical mode, but you need to visualize the things. So from this content-based routing service, internally we are calling addition, subtraction, multiplication, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication web services are using common arithmetic interface.wisdom, common arithmetic interface.wisdom, and here you check the, you remember the structure. Okay, request schema which contains OSB in 1 and OSB in 2, response schema which contains operation name and result. You must be careful when you are remembering this structure. You must be careful. Okay, is it clear? So you need to remember four XSD structures here. Okay, four different XSDs we are using. CBR input output, CBR input output, common arithmetic interface input and output. Okay, let me start the example. So before I start the example, let me keep few things. I need three endpoints. I need three endpoints. Yeah, okay, to implement the example. So what I will do, this is the addition web service endpoint, subtraction web service endpoint. Similarly, we want multiplication web service endpoint. Okay, so what is the multiplication service endpoint? Go to proxy. Go to proxy. Okay, if you go to multiplication proxy, go to transport tab to get the endpoint. This is the endpoint. Let me place the endpoint. I just want to keep the things ready. That's it. Localhost 7101 pistol. Okay, so this is the multiplication web service endpoint. Anyway, all three target services are ready. All three target web services are ready. Now go to your OSB, sorry, JDeveloper. Go to JDeveloper. I made something wrong. Okay, so go to your JDeveloper, create a new OSB project. Okay, you can give any naming convention for this project. It's an OSB tire, right? OSB project. You can give any naming convention. I will say, see, content-based routing. Same name we can give, or you can give any short name, whatever you like. I will give the same naming convention, content-based routing service. Say, okay, finish. So now you have a new project. You have a new project. Remember, guys, in OSB, we don't use MDS. We don't use MDS. I already told you this concept. why we don't use MDS. Okay, anyway, let me iterate. So in OSB, we no need to depend on MDS because in OSB you can access resources from any project. Suppose in content-based routing service project, you want to access some reusable WSDL from other project. Yes, it is possible to reuse from other project, but in SOA it's not possible. Your resources are restricted within the project, or you need to get the resources from MDS, but you cannot get the resources from other project. Okay. But in OSB we don't have that limitation. You can access the documents from any other project as well. Okay, so that's the reason we don't need to depend on the MDS concept in OSB. Anyway, let me create few required folders. You know the navigation, how to create the folders, right? I will say proxy service. Okay, and I will create one more folder, pipeline, and I will create one more folder, results. Okay, and I will create one more folder for transformations. Done. Okay, these are all the folders enough for me at this point of time. Later, if we want any additional folder, we can create. Let me create a proxy service. I will create a proxy service. Okay, so to create the proxy service, we need WSDL. We need WSDL. I already have a WSDL backup on my desktop. I will use that WSDL copy. Um this is CBR proxy service. I will say CBR underscore PS. Okay, and let me browse the WSDL which is on my desktop. To browse the WSDL, we need to import the WSDL from outside OSB project to inside OSB project. Okay, let me browse it. I just clicked on the import button. It is taking time to load. Any questions from anyone? It is the same process we are doing, right? There is nothing new. This is the same process we followed in all the previous examples. But what we want to see in this example is a different thing. I mean, how to communicate with an external service that we want to see. For that, we need to configure something called business service. We'll go to that point. Okay. And after configuring business service, how we design the business logic also, we need to concentrate in the pipeline. This is taking time. This import option always takes time. Okay, we got the import pop-up. Okay, here you can see my WSDL is not within the application. So this is the within the application. My WSDL is not within the application. I need to go to file system. If the WSDL is within the application, you just go to this application option. Okay, you can access all OSB projects. So, but my WSDL is not within the application, so I need to go to file system. Go to file system, and here it is on somewhere on my desktop. Okay, content based routing CBR interface. Is it saved? I made some changes, right? Okay, I saved this. Now browse the WSDL. See, it is asking me to import. Yeah, I will import this into a required folder. Content based routing WSDLs folder. I just changed the folder. Observe here, import location. Into this folder, I want to import the WSDL. Simply say OK and finish. So now what happened? WSDL imported. If you observe in the OSB project, this WSDL document imported under WSDL's folder. Anyway, come back to your pop-up. I want to generate the pipeline as well. CBR underscore pipeline. Okay, click next. And this is the endpoint of my CBR project. It's your choice. You can modify it or you can use the same thing. I just modified it, little bit modified. Say finish. Now what happened? We got one pipeline, one proxy, and WSDL imported. I want to move this pipeline document into pipeline folder. Before you move any document, make sure to close all the files in the developer. Okay, I will move this to pipeline folder. Okay, I will move this to pipeline folder. Say okay. Now it is moved to pipeline folder. Is it mandatory to move the files into respective folders? No, it is only good practice. It is good practice to maintain the files under proper folder structure. Okay, so if you open composite file, now you can see your proxy file and pipeline file. Okay, so the same thing you can see here. This is the dot proxy file. This is dot pipeline file. Okay, so to communicate with any external service in SOA, we configure reference component, correct? So similarly, in OSB, we will configure we will configure something called business service. Okay, we don't have a concept called reference here. We will use the terminology. The term is business service. Of course, this is same as reference component in your SOA project. In SOA project, we have reference component, right? It is the same thing, maybe the navigation a little bit different, but the concept will still remain same. So here we have three target services. That means we need to configure three business services. Okay, we'll see one by one. Let me start creating one business service. I will create one business service at this point. First create the folder. I will say business service folder name. Okay, I got a new folder called business service. Right click on this business service, new business service. You can create new business service. Okay, just select the business service. You can give some naming convention. I will say add BS, add BS, and I want to use the WSDL. I want to use the WSDL. Okay, go to the import section. This is the browse section. Just browse it. If you click browse option, guys, we know we can browse the WSDL anywhere in your machine, not within the application or project. You can have WSDL anywhere in the machine. That is option one. Number two, you can have WSDL within your application. Okay, or you can also get the WSDL. You can also get the WSDL from the endpoint. I mean, this is the endpoint, right? We have an endpoint. Where is it? Edition endpoint. Copy this endpoint. Okay, this is a concrete WSDL. You just keep the endpoint here, say okay. Say okay. Once you say okay, it will try to browse the WSDL. It will try to import the WSDL. Let's assume your target service is not OSB service. It is some Java web service, .NET web service. Then what you need to do, you just need to provide the concrete WSDL endpoint here. So go to this application. Let me show you the navigation once again. So click on this import button, go to this application tab, and in the selection screen, provide the concrete WSDL endpoint. This endpoint can be any technology web service. This can be any technology web service. Okay, remember the concept. It can be any technology web service. No need to be SOA or no need to be OSB web service endpoint. It can be any technology web service. Say OK. Once you click OK button, it will try to import the WSDL. Okay, say OK. See, it is asking you to import the WSDL location. Okay, so I will name it as resource name. I will say add BS, add BS interface, add BS interface. Okay, or add BS. That's enough. So here it is check the folder. Folder is business service folder. If it is not coming, you need to browse the proper folder structure. Okay, click next. So this will be imported under a business service folder. Oh, okay. So I don't want to import my WSDL into business service folder. I want to import my WSDL into WSDL's folder. It is importing WSDL, right? So I want to import the WSDL into WSDL's folder. You can give some naming convention. Okay, add interface. Add BS interface. Okay, add BS interface. Some meaningful naming convention. That's it. See, this is the naming convention we provided in the previous screen. Add bs interface.WSDL, click finish. Okay, now we got the WSDL imported into the project. You can see within the project, the WSDL imported, add bs interface.WSDL. Say next and finish. Done. If you observe here, we got one business service file. One business service file. If you open, it looks like this. See, this is your business service file. This is the endpoint of your target web service. Under transport tab, you can see endpoint of your target web service. Okay. And you can also see the WSDL which is imported. See, this is the add bs interface.WSDL. Add bs interface.WSDL. This is your target web service WSDL. It can be Java web service, .NET web service. In our case, it is OSB web service. In our case, it is OSB web service, but you don't need, you really no need to worry about the technology. It can be Java, .NET, or anything. OSB, so it can be any web service. Done. We got a new business service, right? We got a new business service. So what we need to do? Let me open the content-based routing. Okay, so we got a new business service. We configured new business service. Now I need to choose the business service in composite file. Okay, I need to choose the business service in composite file. Just select the business service option here. Once you select the business service option, it will say browse the business service which you want to display in the composite file. Okay, I just selected it. Say okay. Now you can see one business service. Okay, fine. So guys, this is not mandatory to configure business service in composite file. It is just for our convenience purpose. In the composite file, I want to see all the components. That's it. Okay, it's not mandatory to display the business service on composite like your reference component in SOA. Okay, I will tell you why it is. Okay, let me go back to the pipeline file. In pipeline file, I want to design some business logic here. What I want to do, I want to call, the start node, once I receive the input, I want to call the external service by looking into the content. In the input, in the CBR input, if the operation name is add, in the CBR input, if the operation name is add, I want to call an external edition web service and get the response. Okay, so here you need to observe CBR input structure, output structure. Edition web service input structure, output structure, all are different. Okay, CBR input structure and edition web service input structure are different. Let's see this. If you observe CBR, okay, see, this is the CBR input structure and this is the edition web service input structure, correct? So when your CBR service get the input, that input will be in this format. Okay, from CBR internally you need to invoke edition web service. To invoke edition web service is expecting a different XML format. Correct? That means while calling edition web service, you need to perform data transformation between CBR input to edition web service input. Okay, you need a transformation between these two formats. In the transformation, CBR request is the source. In the transformation, edition request is the target. So you need to perform a transformation between these two formats. Okay, anyway, let's go back to the program. So in this program, we'll do that. What transformation is required, we do that. So before that, we want to perform content-based routing, right? To perform the content-based routing, we have something called, we have a scope actually. We have a flow. We have different scopes and nodes, right, in OSB. So we have something called conditional branch. Conditional branch. First, we need to check a condition. What is the condition here? We need to check the operation name as the condition. If the operation name is addition, call the addition target web service. If the operation name is subtraction, call the subtraction target web service. So if the operation name is multiplication, call the multiplication web service. Okay. Anyway, simply drag drop this conditional branch. Drag drop the conditional branch. Observe here, we got a conditional branch with one condition and a default branch. Okay. One condition branch and default branch. So in the condition branch, in the condition branch, so there are two things you need to configure anytime. I mean, at any time, if you want to configure some condition, you have to configure LHS, okay, and RHS, correct? LHS equal to RHS, LHS greater than, I mean, left hand side and right hand side. Okay, when you configure any condition, there are three parts in the condition: LHS side expression, RHS side expression, and the compare operator. Compare operator, it can be is equal to, greater than symbol, less than symbol, something like this. Okay, so you can use different symbols. So you compare different expressions, right? When we want to implement a condition we can implement with an operator. Uh, LHS less than, right, RHS. LHS greater than RHS. LHS is equal to RHS. This way we can implement the expressions, correct? Condition expression. Okay, so that means there are three things we need to implement to set a condition: LHS expression, RHS expression, and some compare operator. Operator. It can be is equal to operator, greater than operator, greater than or equal to operator, less than or equal to operator. Any required operator we need to implement here. Okay, so in this conditional branch, see, we are using conditional branch. Okay, so here you can see, if you just simply single click on the header of the node, okay, branch node 1, right? So here, if you go to general tab, you can change the name. Okay, I will say cbr conditional branch, conditional branch. Okay, you can give a meaningful naming convention. Okay, and then go to the condition tab. Here you can see condition tab. We are in properties tab, guys. We are in properties tab. You just select this. If you select this node, this property tab will be visible. In the general tab, I changed the display label, and you can add some description as well if you want. Okay, go to condition tab. So here it is asking what is the condition you want to implement. Yeah, my condition is, say this, my condition is in the CBR web service input, if the I want to check the operation name, operation field. Okay, I want to check the operation field. So this input XML will be stored in body variable, right? When the input supplied to your OSB service, when the input supplied to your OSB service, this XML, this XSD related XML, that means valid XML, stored into body variable, stored into body variable. Okay, so once it's stored into body variable, so it is asking how to implement the expression. So my expression is, my data is available in the body variable. My data is available in the body variable, inside body variable, inside body variable. Okay, what is the expression? Inside body variable as request flavor, body variable, inside body variable, operation field. I want to check the operation field. See the XPath dot content based routing request and operation. Content based request and operation. This is the XPath. Are we good with this XPath? Any questions? Any questions? So this is the LHS of my condition. LHS in body variable. In body variable, I need to get the operation value, operation field, operation field. Okay, this is the LHS part. LHS part of the condition I set it at node level. I set this at node level. Okay. Now go to branch. This is the first condition branch. I want to give a meaningful name here. I will say add underscore branch. Okay. This, I want to check some condition which is related to addition. And this is just a display label, guys. It won't do any condition checking. It is just a display label. Okay. See, I just renamed it. Now this is the condition what you need to do. So see, these are all the different conditional operators. Conditional operators. So what we want to do, LHS is equal to, LHS is equal to, LHS already implemented at node level. LHS condition implemented at node level. Now go to add branch. In the add branch, I'm selecting the operator, compare operator. Okay, these are all the different compare operators. And then the RHS is what you want to compare. Your operation name is equal to add. If my operation name is equal to add, control goes to this branch. Okay, suppose I will add one more condition branch here. Okay, second branch I added. Suppose if my operation name, I renamed it sub branch. If my operation name is equal to operator and it is subtraction, RSUB subtraction. So that means it is something like your if else branches, if else, right? So this is if condition is true, execute this. Else if branch will execute, else if branch condition will check, and if it is true, execute the branch. Okay, this is exactly as your if else branch. Okay, so of course, but in this pipeline, we are using operational, oh, one second. Conditional branch. It's not operational branch. Oh, sorry. It is conditional branch which executes like your if else. Okay. If condition true, execute the logic. Else if condition true, execute the logic. Else if true, execute the logic. I mean, you can add any number of else if branches here. Any number of conditional branches you can add here. And if no condition is true, control goes to default branch. Default branch, no need to check any condition. Okay, first let me go with the add branch. Okay, now I am inside add branch. So what we want to do here, if the operation name is equal to, if the field name is equal to add, if the field name is equal to add, I want to call an external web service. In our case, it's a business service. I want to call a business service from this branch. If you want to call any business service, we have multiple options in OSB: routing action, service callout action, publish action. We have three different actions to invoke an external service. If you want to call an external service, we have multiple actions: routing action, service callout action, okay, publish action. The publish action is meant for one-way invocation. I mean, your target service is a one-way web service. It accepts the input but no response. Okay. Any kind of one-way communication, we use publish action. So in this example, I'm not going to use this publish action because publish action is meant for one-way communication. We use it in another example. But we can use routing action. Okay, we can use routing action for any synchronous communication, synchronous and one-way communication. Okay, and service call out is always meant for synchronous communication. I will show you how to configure routing action, how to configure service call out action, and publish action. So guys, in Oracle SOA, to perform all these three things, I mean routing action, service call out action, publish action, everything we can perform by using invoke action. Okay, invoke activity. We don't call it as action, activity in SOA. Okay, by using invoke activity, we can invoke target services, right? It can be synchronous, it can be one way asynchronous, it can be any kind of target service or adapter. We use invoke action. Similar way in OSB, we have three different actions: routing, service callout, and publish. Each has their own purpose and advantages. We'll see one by one. So in the current example, I want to use routing action. I want to use routing action. Let's see. In the addition branch, I want to use routing action. For that, first you need to use route node. Route node. Just drag drop the route node. So this is again a scope, kind of a scope. Okay. Route node. Within the route node, I want to use routing action. See this. This is routing action. Just drag drop routing action. Okay, so this is the routing action. It is same as your invoke activity in beeple. Okay, invoke activity invokes the target service, right? Similarly, this routing action invokes the target service. What is our target service? Our target service is a business service. Okay, select this routing node, and you can see here properties tab. In the properties tab, you need to browse your business service. Just simply browse it, click browse icon. It will give you a pop-up to browse the existing business services. As of now, we have only one business service, right? Let me browse it. My business service is under content-based routing service, business service folder. Just select the business service. Okay, we selected the business service, we browsed the business service, and it is asking for an operation. See, my target service has only one operation name, so I have no other option to select. So select the operation. Suppose your target service, we know, right, we can create web services with multiple operations as well. So in that case, you need to choose proper operation here. Okay, so as of now, I'm selecting arithmetic operation. So business service, this routing node. See, two things we configured here: route node, routing action. Route node is a scope. Route node is just a scope, and this is action. Routing action. So in the routing action, we selected the operation name, target web service operation name. I mean target business service, whatever business service we want to invoke, and the business service operation. Okay, right. So this routing action, we need to little bit discuss on the routing action. Yes, when we are working with routing action. Okay, so first thing, routing action you can configure only inside route node. Only inside route node. That means, suppose, let's see, if I select this routing action and I want to place it somewhere here. See this, observe. If I place it here, what happens? See, only routing node will not come. Only routing action will not come. Routing action always configured with route node. Even though if you miss it, you directly drag drop the routing action, it comes along with the route node. Okay, you cannot configure routing action without routing node. Just make a note of it. Okay, so you cannot configure routing action without routing node. It's not possible. It's not allowed. Okay, now second thing, in the routing action there are three parts. Okay, first one, request action. Number two, routing routing. Number three, response action. Okay, there are three parts in routing action. See, this is request action. This is first part. Number two, routing. This is second part. Number three, response action. Okay, there are three parts in a routing action. Three parts in a routing action. Okay, the way of execution is, first request action will be executed. I mean, whatever logic you configure here, you configure something here. Let's say, let me keep some activities. Okay, see, I am drag dropping some actions. Okay, whether required not required is a different thing. So I drag dropped some actions here. Okay, see, this request action flow will allow you to configure some business logic, and if you configure multiple actions, they will be executed top to bottom execution. Okay, so when you want to execute a routing action, first request action flow will be executed. Whatever logic you configure, that logic will be executed. Okay, this is step one. Step two is routing is nothing but calling the business service. It will call the business service with the respective input. Whatever input we configured for this business service, that input will be sent to this business service. Business service is nothing but an external web service, right? External soap service or REST service, anything. Okay, so this is second step. Step number two, call the external service, call the business service with the respective input and execute the target service. So target service will be executed and target service will generate the output, and the output will come back to routing action. output will come back to routing action. So once the routing action receives the response, step number 2 completed. Okay, then step number 3, whatever logic you configured in the response action, can be any logic. I mean, as per your business requirement, you can configure some logic here. Whatever logic you configured in the response action, that will start executing, that will start the execution, and it is also top to bottom approach. Top to bottom approach. Okay, any questions as of now? There are three parts of routing action: request action, routing, response action. Okay, the way of execution is first request action will be executed, then routing will be executed, then response action will be executed. Any questions in the order of execution? Any questions in the order of execution from anyone? I'm just deleting all these unwanted actions. I just want to show you. I drag drop them. I'm deleting everything. Okay, done. So this point also clear for you, right? So the parts of routing action, and very important point now. See guys, in people process, while you are calling, while you are invoking a target service, your invoke activity will have your invoke activity. Anyone have a question?
No, sir.
No, okay. So while calling an external service, while calling a reference component in people, we use invoke activity, correct? When we are using invoke activity, we also configure invoke input variable and invoke output variable, correct? So that invoke input variable holds the XML structure for target input, target web service input XML, and invoke output variable holds target web service output XML, correct? Invoke input variable. Similarly, we have invoke output variable. Okay, what invoke input variable contains? Target web service input XML, correct? Similarly, here target web service output XML, right? So this is the purpose of invoke input variable and invoke output variable. In OSB, instead of invoke, we are using routing action. We are using routing action instead of invoke. We don't have invoke here, we have routing action. So routing action also need invoke input variable and invoke output variable. Okay, routing action also need invoke input variable and invoke output variable. But in routing action, we don't configure invoke input and invoke output variable, guys. We use body variable as invoke input variable, body variable as invoke output variable. So that means in our OSB pipeline file, we are using body variable at 4 different places. Pipeline input, I mean body variable have 4 different flavors. Okay, what is that? Pipeline input variable. Okay, pipeline output variable. Pipeline input variable, pipeline output variable, and invoke or business, I will say business service, right? Business service input variable, business service output variable, business service input variable and business service output variable. Nothing but invoke input variable and invoke output variable. So we are going to use body variable at 4 different places in the pipeline. At 4 different places in the pipeline. Okay, so you just try to understand this concept. Okay, so we have only one variable that we are using it at 4 different places: pipeline input variable, pipeline output variable, business service input variable, business service output variable. Any questions as of now? Any questions? Okay, so now when you are executing, when you are executing routing action, three steps we need to do, right? So the first step is you need a transformation. You need a transformation between, let me, body variable to body variable. So here, this is pipeline input variable. Here the body variable contains pipeline input XML. Okay, and the target body variable contains business service input XML. Business service input XML. This is the logic we need to implement. We need to implement a transformation that is between body variable to body variable, This is the source variable, this is the target variable in the transformation, and the source is your pipeline input XML and the target is business service input XML. Is this point clear? In the request action branch, we need to implement this logic. And then call the target web service. While calling the target web service, we need to send the data to target web service. Our invoke input variable, our business service input variable is nothing but body variable. We already loaded business service input XML in the body variable in step 1. Is it clear? We need to perform the transformation between pipeline input variable nothing but body to business service input variable nothing but again body variable. Okay, and then we perform the routing. While calling the routing, it will send input data. When you are calling the external web service, you need to send the input data. So the input data we will send by using body variable. So here what will perform? Invoke business service. Okay, while calling business service, we need to supply input. BS input is available in body variable. Okay, done. So the target web service, once we supply the input, target web service will be executed and target web service will generate the output. That output will come back. Okay, business service output will be stored into body variable. Again, the response, whatever response is there in the target web service, that response will be stored into your body variable. So your body variable contains business service output XML. At this point of time, your body variable contains business service output XML. Okay, so now what I want to do, I got a response from my target service, but this is business service response, not the current service response. So again, I need to perform a transformation. I need a transformation between body variable to body variable. Here the source body variable is business service output XML and target body variable is pipeline output XML. So this is the logic we need to implement in routing action. In the request action, one transformation, response action, one transformation. And the transformation, what is the transformation and its source and target? The transformation source and target. This is, okay, this is the request action and this is the transformation source and target. Okay, see guys, to perform this transformation, body variable to body variable, we are performing the transformation. So we need to use a replace action. Because our transformation we are doing, our target variable already contains some data, so we need to replace it. So we need to go for replace action in the to execute the transformation. Same thing here. This is also one transformation. We want to transform from body variable to same body variable. So that means body variable contains some data. We want to replace with expected data. Here also you need to use replace action. Any questions? Any question in the logic which we are going to implement? So this is the logic we want to implement right now. Any question, guys? Can you speak out? Any question? Are you clear? You understand what I'm going to implement? Yes, know something?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes? Okay, good. So now go back to your JDeveloper. First, we need to implement a transformation file. It's your choice, either go with XSLT or XQuery, your choice. Let me create a XQuery file, new XQuery file. Okay, I will create this transformation CBR request to add request. Okay, CBR request to add request. Let's browse the source variable, source XSD. I will name it as source. It is your choice, guys. This is user defined keyword. You can say anything. I'm saying it as source parameter in my XQuery. So browse the XSD here. Okay. So my source XSD is content based routing CBR interface. CBR interface. This is CBR routing request is my source. CBR routing request is my source. See this. CBR routing request is the source. Request schema is the target. In this transformation, we want to transform the data between these two structures. This is the source structure and this is the target structure. Okay, let's do that. So this is the source I selected, and now I need to select the target. My target is Edition Web Service, request XML. Go to content based routing, Edition Web Service, request XML, Edition Web Service, request XSD, request schema. Okay, done. So we are ready with one transformation. Let's do the mappings. Let's do the required mapping. So the first field, insert, and do the mapping. Done. And the second field, insert, you can do the mapping. Done. So we are ready with the request transformation. See the request transformation. This is the request transformation between body variable, I mean pipeline input XML to business service input XML. We configured the transformation file. Now we need to configure the replace action. Let's go back to pipeline. In the request action flow, I want to configure a replace action. Just drag drop the replace action. So this is the replace action. Same thing we need to do. Okay. So first you need to select the XQuery resource, value as XQuery resource. Okay. Browse the XQuery resource here. Click on the browse button. It will open a pop-up. Okay. You need to browse proper transformation file, CBR request to add request. Done. And you need to select the source. You need to select the source. My source is body variable as input variable. Body variable as input variable. So this is the source structure, body variable as input variable. Observe here, guys, we are using body variable with 4 different flavors: pipeline input, pipeline output. See, this is the pipeline input. Body request is the pipeline input, body response is the pipeline output. But we are not able to see body as business service input variable, body as business service output variable. So that we don't see in the graphical mode. Okay. Anyway, first let's do this. I will, I will, I will use, I will use pipeline input XML as source to this transformation. Done. Pipeline input XML as source to this transformation. Content based routing request is the pipeline input XML. Okay. Say okay. Done. So we configured, we browsed transformation file, and we browsed the source XML to execute this transformation. Then what is the target XML? What is the target? Target also body variable. Target, I mean, sorry, this output generates, right? This transformation generates the output. This transformation generates the output. What is the output it will generate? This is the transformation. This is the transformation we designed. So what is the output it generates? business service input XML. This transformation generates business service input XML. Business service input XML is nothing but request schema, OSB in 1, OSB in 2. This format of XML it will generate. This transformation will generate. Okay. Once this transformation generates the required XML, you want to store this XML somewhere, right? I want to store the XML into body variable. I want to store the XML into body variable. Okay. I want to override, or I want to replace the entire content of the body variable. Okay, I will say dot here, xpath is dot, that means root element of body variable, and then replace the node content. I want to replace the node content. Now, before executing this replace action, before executing this replace action, your body variable contains pipeline input XML, pipeline input XML. After executing this replace action, your body variable contains business service input XML. After executing transformation, after executing this transformation file, your body variable contains business service input XML. Is the point clear? Is the point clear? Okay. Now the same body variable go to your routing action. Step 1 completed, right? Step 1 is request action. Step 1 completed. Step 2 routing. So this routing will be executed. It will send the body variable as input, body variable as invoke input variable to the target service, to our target business service, and execute the business service. So once the target service executed and generated the output, that output will come back to your routing action. Now body variable replaced with your business service output XML. Body variable replaced with your business service output XML. Okay. So what we need to do, once we receive the response from target service, we need to execute another transformation as we discussed. Once the routing completed, your body variable contains business service output XML. Business service output XML. Business service output XML will be stored into body variable. Okay. So then to complete the process, we need to perform the response action. That is nothing but you need to perform one more transformation between body variable to body variable. But this time source body variable contains business service output XML. I want to transform this into pipeline output XML. For this, we need a transformation. Okay. So I don't do this step 3. I don't do this step 3. We'll see what is going to happen. I don't want to implement this step 3. Okay. Let's deploy the service and test it and see what will happen. I want to deploy this guy. See, I'm directly deploying it. I'm not exporting the jar and importing the jar. I'm directly deploying it. Let me go to service bus console. Okay. Now, okay, we have this as well. Okay, let me create a SOAP service. http://localhost:7101, and what is the endpoint of your CBR pipeline, right? CBR proxy. Go to CBR proxy, and this is the CBR endpoint. Question mark visitor. Okay, give some name. Content-based routing. Say okay. Oh, what happened? Localhost. There is a spelling mistake here. Okay, there is a spelling mistake. Localhost colon. I should use colon. Okay, so we got a new SOAP project. Let me save this project. It is always a good practice to save the SOAP project first before you do anything else. Okay, done. You can give some input. This is add. Okay, see the input structure, guys. See the input structure. Content based routing request, correct? Submit the request. Observe here what is the response. What is the response? What is the response? Response schema. Response schema. But what is the response expected? In content-based routing service, what is the response expected? Content-based routing response we are expecting. But what we got in SOAP UI? We got response schema. We got this response schema. Observe. See, this is the input. This is the input. This is the input of pipeline. This is the output of pipeline. This is the input of business service. This is the output of business service. Correct? So 4 XSDs we have. But what we received, I submitted pipeline input XML, but I got business service output XML. Why? Because we did not perform response transformation here. Because we did not perform response transformation. What happened? we called the we called the business service, and business service executed and generated the response come back to your OSB program. Once we receive the business service response will be stored into body variable. So after executing this routing action, our body variable contains business service output XML. Business service output XML. And after we got the response, we have no business logic. We have no business logic executed. So whatever data contains in body variable, that comes as your output. That comes as your output. My body variable contains business service output XML, and there is no logic in my pipeline response flow. So whatever content is there in the body variable, that comes as output. Is it clear? I just want to show you at this point of time, when routing execution completed, I want to show you body variable contains your business service output XML, that I want to show you. That's what the reason I did not implement the response transformation. Is it clear? You can also test the surveys. From SB console. Let me test this. Go to pipeline, CBR pipeline. I'm testing pipeline, guys, not proxy here. I'm testing pipeline. Just go to pipeline file. You can trace it. You know the advantage, right, between proxy testing and pipeline testing. If you test the pipeline file, you will get some trace. Okay. So let's say 120. Okay. Submit the request. You can see this is the request we submitted. Of course, this is pipeline input XML. Okay. What happened? Now go to the trace. Check the trace. Something wrong? Oh, sorry. I, I submitted the wrong data. 120, and we need to keep the addition as well, right? Operation name. Okay. Now execute it. If you execute it, see this. This is the pipeline request, and this is the business service output XML. Business service output XML as pipeline output XML. Okay, it is coming. It is actually business service output XML, but we are seeing this XML as pipeline output. Okay, why? Because we did not perform any response transformation. Okay, see here the trace. We received the input XML. This is the input XML we received. I mean, pipeline received. And then internally we are calling. We have a route node which got executed. Route node 1 executed. See this? This is route node 1, right? If you give a meaningful name, that will be more clear in the trace. So whatever, we already gave a naming convention, route node 1. See, this is route node 1 executed. In route node 1, you can see your body variable which contains business service input XML. In routing action, your body variable contains business service input XML because we perform the transformation. We perform the transformation between pipeline body variable to business service body variable. Is the concept clear? This is the pipeline body variable content. This is business service body variable content. We perform the transformation. See, same body variable. Same body variable contains different data because we performed the transformation and replaced the data of body variable. Okay, and then this routing executed, right? This routing completed. After completing this routing, you can see something called changed body. Changed body. If you go to changed body, you can see business service output XML. Business service output XML. Is it clear? Business service output XML. Okay, so from business service output XML, transform it to pipeline output XML. We need to do that. We did not execute a response transformation. We did not configure response transformation. So we are not getting pipeline output XML. Okay, let me do that. Let me create one more transformation file. Let me create one more transformation file. Okay, so this time I will say add bs response, okay, or add response, addition response to cbr response. Okay, browse the structures. What is my source? I will say source and browse the xsd. This time the source xsd is addition response. Addition response is the source xsd. Okay, addition response is the source xsd. And target, we need to select the target. This is the target configuration. Target is cbr response. Cbr response is the target. Done. We are ready with the transformation file. Now do the required mappings. Okay, operation name insert, just do the mapping. Result insert, just do the mapping. Done. So we are ready with response transformation. Now you need to execute it. So how to execute this one? For this transformation, body is the source variable, body is the target variable. So we need to go for replace action. Replace action. Body is the source variable, body is the target variable. So we need to use the replace action. Okay. In this replace action, let's browse the transformation file. My transformation file, we already configured a transformation file, right? Addition response to CBR response. Addition response to CBR response. And here you can configure the transformation file. So guys, this is the challenge here. So what is our source? Here addition response is the source. Nothing but business service response is the source. The business service response is available in body variable. Correct? Business service response is available in body variable. If you see this, so here we don't get body variable structure for business service. Business service input variable, business service output variable is not visible here. You need to construct it. You need to construct it manually. How to write the XPath? Dollar body slash dollar body slash. Okay, this is the business service response, right? Business service response XML, dollar body slash response schema, and you need to give qualifier as well. Qualifier also important. Okay, so what is the target namespace here? Common arithmetic interface. This is the namespace of your addition business service. Target namespace of addition business service. Get it? You need to design the qualifier as well. For that, what you need to do, go to namespace and first add the namespace. First add the namespace and give a prefix. I will say BS. Okay. Say okay. See, this is the qualifier I added in this list. BS is my qualifier and use the qualifier. So we don't get business service input structure, business service output structure in the variables list. In the variables list, you don't see business service request, business service response. You see only pipeline request, pipeline response. So, but we know our body variable contains business service response. We know body variable contains business service response. So you need to build the XPath. This is the source of the transformation. Business service output variable is the source of the transformation. Okay. And then say, okay, the source is ready. Now you need to concentrate on the target. My target also body variable. My target is body variable, and body variable I want to replace root element, and I want to replace the root element node content. Node content. That's it. Now deploy and test your web service. Deploy and test your web service. Simply deploy. So once you deploy, you can test the web service. Okay, fine. So this is the last time response, right? Let me take a screenshot of it. Let me take a screenshot of it. Okay, done. Let me test the same web service now. I will test the same web service. Submit the request. See what is the response we received. Compare. See what we received last time and now. Last time we received business service response, correct? But now we received proper pipeline response. Proper pipeline response. Is it clear? Because we performed the response transformation as well. Okay. Any questions as of now, guys? Of course you can test your pipeline file. You can go back and test your pipeline file. Okay, execute. You can see you got the proper pipeline response, and of course you can go to the trace. You can go to the trace. Okay, so if you see changed body will show you the final body variable. So this time you can see pipeline output. Okay, we replaced the content of body variable, right? So guys, suppose if you want to see if okay, I will extend the concept tomorrow. I will stop here. Already we reached our time. Okay, we crossed our time, not reached, we crossed our time. So do the practice till this point, guys. Tomorrow I will extend this example. I will add more content here. Okay, let me stop the recording.